Change.
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 Change can start with me.
With me.
With me.
With me.
But together,
We can support.
We can rebuild.
We can transform.
we can encourage,
We can lift up.
We can move forward.
We can make progress.
because we
Because we
Because
Because
we is greater than me.
Hey everybody, welcome to Real Church for Real People. Glad to be in church today. For all of you in the room, welcome. And for all of you gathering online with us right now, so glad that you're along for the ride as well. We are in week 2 of a series that we're calling We is Greater Than Me. And if you're joining us for the first time during this series, we're talking about how God designed us to do life together, how that God didn't create us to try and figure out all of life's problems on our own, but that when we do life with other people, when we recognize that we're part of a community, then we begin to understand that together we can do more of what matters, more to make a difference in the world around us, more to grow in our own faith. And as we jump into week 2 of the series, I want to ask you a question. Resist the urge to answer out loud and resist the urge to type it in the comments because there are going to be a lot of different opinions, all right? So here's the question. If I asked you, what do you think is the biggest problem in the world today, what would come to mind? Like, what is the one thing that if it changed today would make the biggest difference? And again, I think there are a lot of different opinions about what the answer might be. Some of us would say, well, that's easy. If COVID went away, that would make the biggest difference. Nothing comes even close to that. Totally disrupted our lives. Some of us might say if people would respect each other more. Like maybe you would say, if my kids would just listen to me, or you would say, if my parents would just listen to me, that would make the biggest difference. Some of us might say it's the economy. If jobs would come back, we could figure out all this financial upheaval, or if our elected officials could figure things out, get their act together on both sides of the aisle, if we could just make progress there, that's the biggest problem. For some of us, we are lying awake at night because the biggest problem we're worried about is what's going to happen with the Eagles this fall. And we're worried. We're wondering, like, what is the deal with football? Are we going to be able to go to games? What's that going to look like? And then I think for a lot of us, we would say, hey, my biggest problem right now, I don't know about the world around me, but my biggest problem is trying to stay positive in the midst of all the problems that are around me. And I can relate to that in a big way. But let me ask you a follow-up question. Whatever you think about Jesus, what do you think Jesus would say is the biggest problem in the world today? Like if we had Jesus in front of us right now in the flesh, we asked him, hey, would you just tell us what is the biggest problem in the world? What would he say? And what if it's not what we think? What if it actually has little to do with pandemics or politics or virtual school or the economy or any of those things? What if it's not what we think it is? Well, if you're new to the story of Jesus, at the very beginning of his public ministry, right before he starts teaching and doing miracles and healing people, before he's really known, a lot happens in a short period of time. He gets baptized, he's tested by Satan, and then he chooses 12 disciples. If you're new to the Bible, you've probably heard of that idea before. Maybe you've seen pictures of Jesus with the 12 disciples. This is his starting lineup, right? These 12 guys that he calls to follow him. They leave everything behind. I mean, we kind of think of them as spiritual ninjas, the 12 disciples, the heroes of the story of Jesus, but then you have the 12 disciples. And if you're familiar with that, what you might not know is that those 12 disciples are not the only ones Jesus chose. In fact, in the book of Luke in the New Testament, we read these words. Listen to this. The Lord now chose 72, keyword, other disciples. Why is that important? Well, moment of truth. How many of us in the room, by a show of hands, would say that we are not always picked first for team sports? Just be honest. Watching online, you can put a crying emoji in the comments right now. All right, flip side of the coin. How many of us, it's okay, are picked first, typically, for team sports. No shame, just we only hate you a little. Just raise your hand, put a bicep emoji in the comments. Let us know you got game. We get it. So I'm in the first group. Just, when I was a kid, I was rarely chosen last for team sports, but I was even more rarely chosen first. I don't remember ever being last. Because I think by the time the captain, whoever was choosing, got to me, they were like, I'll take Johnston because he has no skill, but lots of passion. If nothing else, he'll keep us entertained. He probably won't get anything right, but we need that guy, before we choose the worst. Let's choose I was kind of in the lower 30th percentile as a kid. Anybody know what I'm talking about? All right, you feel me. So I think a lot of us, wherever we land with team sports, have felt that way when it comes to our faith. Maybe we look at other people, they got game spiritually in our mind. They're more spiritual than we are. They've been following Jesus longer maybe, or they read the Bible more. They have less embarrassing issues going on in their lives, fewer hang-ups, more confidence. And we think, they would be the 12 disciples today. That's who Jesus would choose first, but I wouldn't be in that group. And believe it or not, you may find this difficult to believe, but I promise you, I can relate. I feel that way often. I see people who are more qualified than me, people who seem to have it all together compared to me, and I feel inadequate. In fact, sometimes I think God called me to be a pastor so he could keep his eye on me. Like, I don't think he chose me because I'm particularly qualified. I think Jesus was like, Mark, I need you to be a pastor because I can't let you get too far. Like, I need you close where I can keep an eye on you. So I've felt that way. And if you've struggled with that, that's why these 72 other disciples give me hope. And they should give you hope. If you've ever felt inadequate compared to someone else, the 72 other disciples send a message. Let's stop comparing ourselves to someone else and let's start living in the reality that Jesus chose us. Maybe he chose 12 disciples, but he didn't stop there. Thank God there were other disciples. Anybody feel like one of the other disciples today? Everybody's like, no, I'm completely spiritually mature. I don't know what your problem is, but I'll give you a golf clap, I guess. If you don't do it now, it's just pity now. It doesn't work. Know your moment, all right? But if you've ever felt that way, I can relate. And so Jesus chooses these other disciples, and then watch this. Luke writes, he sends them ahead in pairs to all the towns and places that he planned to visit. So Jesus chooses these other disciples, and he says, okay, I'm sending you, and I'm going to have you go ahead of me to kind of prepare the way. Now, if you don't consider yourself a follower of Jesus yet, permission not to buy this next part. You could take a pass on this. And by the way, if that's you, I'm glad you're here. I'm not here to twist your arm. Nobody's going to try to pressure you into believing anything you're not ready to believe yet. I'm just glad you're exploring what a spiritual life could look like. But for all of us who have said yes to following Jesus, whether we said that last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago, wherever we are in that, listen, have you thought recently about your job description as a follower of Jesus? What does it really mean to follow Jesus? Now, at the top, the first line on the job description for all of us is simply knowing Jesus. Being in relationship with God, enjoying what it means to have a connection with him. And we're human beings before we are human doings. But we have also been given a mission. You have been given a mission. You have been sent. When you walk onto that job site this week or into that office building, Jesus has sent you ahead because he would like to visit that environment. When you get on that Zoom call this Tuesday, you say, Jesus is working through Zoom? I thought only the devil was in charge of this virtual thing, and I've been in Zoom so long, and I'm so tired of it. What if Jesus sent you ahead onto that Zoom call? While you're finalizing your plans for high school or college this fall, Jesus is sending you ahead. He sends his disciples ahead, not just the ninjas. All of his disciples, every one of us has been sent ahead to a place that he intends to visit. And not only does he send us ahead, he sends us ahead in pairs, doing life together because we is greater than me. So then the question is, well, why? Why does Jesus send us? He didn't just choose us, he sends us. Why? He tells us the answer. The harvest is great. The harvest is great. Now, when Jesus uses this word harvest, he's using language his listeners would be accustomed to. This agricultural picture is what he's painting. Many of them were farmers that were very used to that picture, and so he's describing people who are ready to come to faith in him. Jesus used this metaphor of a harvest to describe people whose lives were ready for a change. In another place, he says it this way, you know the saying, 4 months between planting and harvest. So you put the seed in the ground in the spring, and then you wait. Time goes by, that seed germinates, sends down roots, a little bud comes up through the surface, it grows up, and 4 months later, in the fall time, you get a harvest. But I say, wake up and look around. The fields are already ripe for harvest. In other words, there are people who would come to faith in me right now. You don't have to wait. It's not for some future time. The harvest is already ready. The harvest is great. If you've ever started a business or ran a business or you took a business course in college, you get this idea what Jesus is describing in economic terms. For the rest of us, it's called supply and demand. Anybody ever heard of supply and demand? Simple economics, here's how business works. If you're going to have a successful business, first you have to establish that there is a demand for the unique product or service that you have to offer. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the clearance bin as one of those as seen on TV leftovers. People thought they wanted it, but very quickly figured out they didn't. Marked down 5 times, You got to have demand for your product or service. Simple economic principle. Then you've got to make sure there's supply, because if there's a demand, if there's a need for what you have to offer, but you don't have adequate inventory, you're in trouble. You have a mismatch. Got to have demand, got to have supply. And then finally, you got to figure out what comes in between supply and demand, which is the delivery mechanism. How do I get what I have to offer to the market at the moment the market needs it most? You say, why are we talking about business in church? Stay with me. It's going to make sense in a moment. And for all of us who are trying to figure out what I just said, think toilet paper this past March. High demand. And it seemed like there was a supply, but the delivery mechanism was broken. And some of us were hoarding. We had our Costco carts piled high. You know who you are. May the grace of our Lord Jesus. Jesus says, I have a product that I am trying to get to the market, except it's different than any product that the world has ever seen. My product is the transformation of people's lives. Think about that. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus made a way for people to experience a rich and satisfying life with God. And here he makes it clear, demand for what I have to offer is high. Maybe it doesn't seem like it at times, but the truth is people need what Jesus has to offer. They're turning to all kinds of things that they think are going to satisfy them, but it's all ultimately a dead end, because only the hope that Jesus brings can meet the deepest needs of the human soul. We need what Jesus has to offer. Jesus is what we're searching for, even when we don't realize it. Ultimately, nothing else can bring us fulfillment and hope outside of a life-giving relationship with God through faith in Jesus Christ. Demand is high. The world needs Jesus. You say, well, what about supply? We've got demand established. What about supply? Good news, supply is high. What Jesus did on the cross has provided enough forgiveness and enough hope and enough redemption and purpose to cover anyone who comes to him by faith. He will never run out. You've never met a person that Jesus doesn't have enough love and forgiveness to offer. Supply is high. So demand is high and supply is high. Then what's the problem? Well, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. And there it is. We wanted to know what Jesus would say is the biggest problem in the world today. And here he answers the question. Jesus says, my biggest problem, the biggest issue in the world from my opinion, my perspective, isn't people not needing hope that I have to offer. And it isn't that I don't have enough hope and salvation to give. The problem is the delivery mechanism. Us. And Jesus says, this is why I'm sending you. I didn't just choose you. I've sent you. Not just the spiritual ninjas, not just the black belts. Every disciple of mine is given a mission, and I'm sending you. A few years ago, our family went on a cruise with some friends, and Susie, my wife, and I took both of our kids. Connor, our son, was about 9 at the time, and Connor has autism. At the time, he had very little language, and he had a habit of sneaking off, which was so much fun for our family. And we're on this cruise, and one morning, in the middle of the cruise, Susie had a massage scheduled. So everybody in our family got to choose one thing they were going to do on the cruise. Hers was a massage. She'd been looking forward to it. And so she went to her massage. I woke up that day with a headache, didn't feel well. And so our friend said, we'll take Connor to breakfast. My daughter wanted to stay in the room, kind of sleep in, and I had a headache. They said, we'll take Connor to breakfast. You just stay in the room and relax. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And so they took Connor to breakfast, and about a half an hour later, I heard a pounding at the door. And I got up, and I went to the door, and I opened it up, and the wife of my friend was standing there looking at me, and she had this wide-eyed look on her face, and she said, Connor is missing. And I was like, that is the worst joke anyone has ever played. We're not friends anymore. But then I could tell quickly she wasn't messing around. She said, no, we took him to breakfast. We turned around. He was gone. She was frantic. So I put my shoes on. We went up, took the elevator up to the highest floor where the restaurant on the cruise ship was on the highest floor. It was this round restaurant with glass all the way around. They had taken him there for breakfast, and we ran up there, and my friend is up there. He's looking. We start looking. We get the staff of the ship to start looking, and after a few minutes, no Connor, and so they start printing out photos of our son from the ship computer, and they're passing them out to passengers, and we're looking everywhere. And I got to be honest with you, after a few minutes, I started to assume the worst. I just got this terrible feeling. Cold sweat broke out. Where's my son? And I went to meet with some of the senior officers on the ship because all this time had passed. We hadn't found Connor, and we were about to have a conversation, and it was going to be a ship-wide thing now to find Connor. And as I was getting ready to talk with him, a staff member came running up and said, good news, we found your son. And what Connor had done was he had given our friends the slip, and he went and hid behind a table down on the ground, and he's just lying there looking out the window, just chilling. And in that moment, if you're a parent, you can understand. And even if you're not, you get the relief. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. It's like the relief washed over me. I was so glad my son was safe. And then one of the ship's officers turned to me and said, hey, just so you know, in another 5 minutes, we would have turned the ship around. That's our protocol. Once someone is missing, can't be found for a certain length of time, especially a minor, we turn the ship around and we begin to retrace our path. So I thought about that, and I thought, so this cruise ship that exists for the entertainment and comfort of its passengers would have turned the boat around and in the middle of the Atlantic and retraced their path and made 4,000 people disrupt their cruise to maybe find one kid who might have fallen overboard to maybe rescue him. I thought, man, that's amazing, especially when you consider that so many churches leave a sea of bodies bobbing in the water behind them because they don't want to disrupt their vacation. Is it possible that some of us have forgotten why we're on the boat? And we're like, is it filet or salmon tonight? And Jesus is saying, I brought you on the boat to save you. Good news, We're going to get to the destination. For all of you who've been freaking out lately, can I just tell you, let me give you with 100% certainty, complete confidence, you don't have to worry about your life. If you put your faith in Jesus, he gets every passenger safely to the destination. Everyone. There may be high seas along the way. One night the food might not taste great. The entertainment may be subpar on occasion, but he gets every passenger to the destination. But could it be in the meantime, Jesus is saying, hey, for all of you that are on the boat, I've got a problem. And it's the biggest problem, in my opinion. And I'm inviting you, I'm asking you, in fact, I'm pleading with you. Will you help me solve it? The harvest is great. The workers are few. Jesus is saying, I don't have enough people on the boat who understand they were saved to serve. Will you help me solve my problem? Now, thankfully, Jesus is a good leader. I have a passion for developing leaders, and I coach leaders often. Hey, great leaders don't just bring problems to the table. Anybody can bring problems to the table. Anybody can post about problems. Good leaders bring solutions. And Jesus is the greatest leader there's ever been. So he doesn't just point out the problem, he points to the solution. And he says, hey, the harvest is great, workers are few. That's the problem. In my opinion, Jesus says, it's the biggest problem in the world, but thankfully there's a solution. And it's actually very simple. It just involves two things. Number one, so pray. I need all of you who believe in me, all of you who are followers of mine, Jesus says, to just do two things. Step one, pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. And here's what I want you to pray. Ask him to send more workers into his field. Step one, pray. And Jesus says, I know you're going to pray that you'll get a raise, and I know you're going to pray that your cold will get better, and I know you're going to pray that the Eagles will play in person this fall, and I know you're going to pray all of those things, and I get that, and that's okay, but I need you to not stop there. Don't finish praying until you've zoomed out from your own problems and your own needs and your own issues on the cruise ship. I need you to pray for a need that's bigger than you. I need you to pray to the Lord that he will send workers into the fields. Pray with the passion of someone who remembers what it was like to be bobbing on an open sea, hoping someone would rescue them. I need you to pray. And then step two, now go. Jesus says, I just need you to do two things. I need you to pray. Prayer's bigger than your own needs. And then I need you to go. You say, well, when should we go? Now. Not when we figured it out. Not when there's a vaccine. Not when our problems are solved. Not when school is no longer digital or hybrid, or not when all of our financial issues are resolved. Not when all of our concerns. Not when our anxiety lessens. Not when we feel good about everything. No, Jesus says, I need you to go, and I need you to go now. I need you to wake up and look around. The harvest is great. Don't stay where you are. Go to a world that needs me, and go now. So let's recap. What's the biggest problem in Jesus' eyes? The harvest is great. The workers are few. What's the solution? Very simple. Two things. Number one, pray. Number two, go. That's how we solve the problem. The solution to Jesus' problem is sitting in this room right now. Is gathering online right now. It's followers of Jesus, young and old and somewhere in between, black, white, brown, new to faith, seasoned, mature, and everywhere in between. It's followers of Jesus who will simply do two things, pray and go. And not one or the other, by the way. Pray and go, both and. Pray in a way that leads you to go. If your prayers aren't lead you to going, then you're praying them wrong. And go in a way that leads you to pray. If you're not risking enough with your going that you feel the need to pray, you're doing it wrong. I need you to pray so much that you go, and I need you to go so much that you pray. And that's the solution. A couple years ago, a woman in our church named Jess was going through a tight time, her and her husband financially, and so she decided to get creative about saving money. And she planted a garden at home. She figured, well, I can grow some vegetables and save us some money on groceries. So she planted a garden, and soon she realized she was growing more food than her and her husband could eat. And so she thought, well, what am I going to do about this? So she decided she would start a J group, just find a few people, and they'd plant slightly larger gardens together and then give the food away to people in need. So she started a J group, and then it grew. And this is her story. Watch this.
So my J group was called Planting to Feed Greater Wilmington. And, I was thinking so small at the time. I was just like, these are the people, that I should be helping. The woman who was supporting me said, I think you should drop the Greater Wilmington, because if you do that, it'll give you the capacity to serve more people. We're able to reach further. I'm able to start a Planting to Feed in Wilmington. I'm able to start a Planting to Feed in Dover. I'm able to start a Planting to Feed in Elkton. I'm able to start a Planting to Feed somewhere in Virginia, wherever I want in the United States. And we're still making that same impact. And I just cannot wait to see where God's gonna take this church, because with the church grows Code Red, which means more people are being fed, more people are, being saved, more people in general are just being loved on. And so I'm so excited to see Code Red just blow up. I'm excited to see the love that we've seen through COVID, and just, it didn't stop at COVID. It's carrying on through Love Month. I am just really excited. People will come around you that you have never expected, people that you don't even know. If it's for God and for His people, it'll happen so easily. You just have to listen to the calling. So,
isn't that cool? I love that story. We just have to be willing to listen to the call and to not do it alone, to believe that we is greater than me. So maybe you're asking the question today, well, how do I know if I'm one of those people who should pray and go? And I think that's a great question. How do you know if this applies to you? And the answer is, do you believe in Jesus? Now, if you would say, no, I'm not sure that I do, that's your next step. And if that's you, again, I'm not here to twist your arm, but I do want you to know that's what I'm praying for you, because there's no greater decision that you will ever make in your life than the decision to say yes to making Jesus leader and Lord of your life. But if your answer is yes, if you would say, I believe in Jesus, then you know that you have been sent, because Jesus never chooses anyone that He doesn't always send. And maybe you feel like, well, but I'm one of the other disciples. Me too. We've still been sent. Even though we have our own issues and our own problems, we've still been sent. And you have been sent like Eric, a guy in our church who passed away recently. And we mourned the loss of this larger-than-life figure. But when we gathered to celebrate his life, the stories were told of dozens of people he had impacted, dozens of people he had brought with him to a gathering like this, many of whom found life in Jesus as a result. You've been sent like Aiden, a high schooler in our church who found out that the tornado that touched down a couple of weeks ago had damaged a friend's home, so he put together a team to serve that family. You've been sent like Rita, who joined our young adult residency this summer and is finding purpose in helping students experience God. You've been sent like Brandon, who has a gift for video, so he's helping us find more people who can experience God online and extend our reach so more people hear about Jesus. You have been sent like Joanne, who decided to take a step in her leadership and join Potential, our leadership intensive, to learn to tell better stories that point people to Jesus. You've been sent like Will, who started serving online during COVID-19 and now leads a host team of a couple dozen people who help people gather in 3 different locations online. You've been sent like Zach and Chuck, who experienced the pain of addiction personally, so they started a recovery group here that grew and is now setting the stage for a nonprofit treatment center coming out of our community of faith. You've been sent like Johnston, who was brand new to faith in Jesus and wanted to get connected with a few young adults, so he started a J group that outgrew his apartment. You have been sent, and the stories go on and on and on. And those are just a few of the names of some of the other disciples that are being recorded in heaven. Why? Because they are living their lives to solve Jesus' biggest problem. And all of those stories started so simply with just a simple yes to an opportunity, an invitation extended, a small step outside of someone's comfort zone. You have been sent. And the reason is because Jesus has a problem. It's not demand. It's not supply. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. And you are the solution. Some of us spend so much time and energy trying to figure out what is God's plan for my life. Maybe you've even felt like that recently, like there's so many problems, there's so much disruption. What is God doing? What am I supposed to do? Just two things. Promise you the ship is going to get safely to the shore. In the meantime, Jesus is looking for people who will pray and people who will go. As a church, we have a vision for what we call Journey City, a 30-mile circle in our region where 1.8 million people live. And so many of them need the hope and the life that is only found in Jesus. We believe we've been sent as a church to that circle, to every city and town and to every person in that circle. And here's our strategy, probably going to sound familiar at this point. Number one, we're going to pray. We have a spiritual strategy. I pray over a map of Journey City every week in my slot and spot, my time and place with God. And I encourage you to do that. If you're wondering, what should I pray for? Get a copy of that map, that circle, and just pray over it. Ask God to send more workers into the fields. We invest and invite, which means we build friendships with people who don't know Jesus, and we pray for them. And we build trust, and we serve them, and then we invite them to experience God with us. And as we do that, we pray. We're going to be praying August 24th through the 30th is a week of prayer. Every evening we'll be connecting for prayer. Both of our physical locations and then online live at yourjourney.tv. And we're going to be asking God to send more workers into the fields. If you're wondering, what am I supposed to do with my life? And not only that, we're going to answer the second part of Jesus' instructions, the second part of Jesus' request. We're going to go. So we have a compassion strategy all month long. In August, it's Love Month. We're serving people. We're strapping on those serve t-shirts, and we're making a difference for the hungry and the thirsty and the overlooked and the sick and the naked and the imprisoned. We're making a difference for people who are in need because Jesus called us to. If you haven't signed up to serve yet, sign up to serve. If you've already served, double dip, because you're the solution to Jesus' problem. Not only that, we have an empowerment strategy as part of Jesus calling us to go. I won't rest until every person in our community of faith knows what your gifts are, how God wired you, very simply to make a difference. And you are doing something every week of your life to go make a difference. You need to do more than make a living. You need to make a life. And the way you make a life is getting involved in something bigger than you. So Plugged In is available on demand, online. If you haven't joined the J Team yet, come on in. Now's the time. Serve. If during COVID-19 you got disengaged, you got distracted, you fell back, you slipped away, it's okay. Step back up. You're the solution to Jesus' biggest problem, and we need your gifts in action. And then finally, we have a multiplication strategy. We believe that Jesus is calling us to every town and every city in Journey City, and we may not be able to change the whole world, but we are going to change ours by the grace of God. And so we're going to help other churches, and we're going to plant other locations, and we're going to be generous, and we're going to give beyond ourselves. And if you want to help us multiply, when you give, after you give your first, as God leads, give toward expansion. Why do I say all of that? Because if you're wondering what you're supposed to do with your life, so good news and bad news. Good news is now you know. Bad news is you'll never be able to say you didn't know. And I wonder if some of us showed up this weekend thinking, I just don't know what to do. So many problems, and I'm not really sure what God's plan is for my life. I love you. But maybe the problem is not that you're not sure what God's plan is for your life. You're just not sure yet that you're willing to do it. And the truth is, at the end of the day, let's just be really honest. And again, if you're not a follower of Jesus yet, I hope what you hear is how much you matter to God. That he would speak to every one of his followers and say, ultimately, you are either part of my solution or you are part of my problem. Because Jesus says, according to me, the biggest problem in the world is that there are people who would come to faith in me right now. Demand is high, and I have enough to give. I can forgive any sin. I can change any life. No one's too far gone. The harvest is great. It's just that the workers are few. The delivery mechanism, the means by which I get my hope to the world is distracted by other problems and other issues. And they're sailing past the people who need to be rescued. And they've overcomplicated it when all I need them to do is just two things. Pray for needs bigger than your own, and go make a difference. And if you would say today, I'm in. I may not feel like a spiritual ninja. I may not feel like I've got it all figured out. I may feel like there are other people way more qualified. But I'm in. I want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. If you're in the room, will you just lift your hand and hold it up high right now? Just boldly say, I'm in, I'm in. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm in. I'm in. Gathering online right now, give us a hand raise emoji in the comments. Come on, flood them in. I'm in, I'm in. Let's pray. Jesus, the harvest is great. The workers are few. But by your grace, not here, not on our watch. Jesus, we come to you with all kinds of problems. We're grappling with stuff, we're wrestling with stuff, anxiety's high, pressure's high, uncertainty's high. But right now, in a moment of clarity, we remind ourselves of our mission on this planet as your followers. And we will pray. This week, we'll pray. We'll pray before we get on that Zoom call. We'll pray before we walk into that environment. We'll pray before we say hello to that neighbor. We'll pray, and then we'll go wherever you send us, wherever you open the door. We will not ask you for a new assignment until we complete this one. We're called, we're sent, we'll go. In Jesus' name. And let God seal that in your life right now, that decision to follow him. For some of you in this moment, you need to know you matter so much to the God of the universe. He loves you so much that he sent someone ahead to make this moment possible for you. So he sent someone to invite you. He sent someone to share this live stream. He sent someone to greet you. He sent someone to create a way so that this moment, this message could get to you, so you could know you were worth it to him. And if you don't yet have a real relationship with God through faith in Jesus Christ, this is your moment. This is your opportunity. Right where you are, whisper out a prayer of faith from your heart, something like this. It can be this simple. Jesus, today I believe in you. I give my life to you. I believe you died to save me, and I believe you are real and alive right now. I trust my life to you. And if that's you, all, everyone around you, if you're in the room, everyone around you is focused on God. If that's you, would you lift your hand and just hold it up high? It's simple but powerful. It just says, that's me, that's my step. For all of you online right now, type the word faith in the comments. It's simple, but there's something about just acknowledging, I'm putting my faith in Jesus today. It's powerful. And then everybody, will you help me? Come on, let's celebrate the goodness of God.